Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Mutpata Mansa Paribhajagacharya Suttara Smavati Tanta Saraswati Shari Bhagavati Jaya Kanta Kodi Vaishnavati Jaya Ramacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Jaya Nain Sutta Hosi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivacharya Gaur Jaya Sri Radha Krishna Bhogavnath Samkand Radha Kund Giriodhan Ki Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya Navadvip Dham Ki Jaya Ganga Mai Ki Jaya Jamuna Mai Ki Jaya Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jaya Swami Bhaktivinoda Ki Jaya All glories to the All glories to the
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. So close to
Hare
the challenge. Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Maharaj, you're welcome. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you. Just one thing,
So
actually, that on your advertisement, it's got 3 o'clock in Greenwich Mean Time or London time, but the clocks have gone forward, so it should be 1 hour in front of Ghana now, when you advertise it.
Yeah, the line was breaking a little bit. I wasn't hearing everything you were saying, Maharaj.
I say that on the schedule, which you send on WhatsApp,
Yeah,
it's got GMT or Greenwich Mean Time, London time, equal to Ghana time, but the clocks have gone forward.
exactly.
It's 4 o'clock.
Yes, it's actually 3 o'clock in Ghana, and in Nigeria it's 4 o'clock now.
In the UK, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, devotees, Please welcome today's Srimad Bhagavatam daily class. We are very fortunate today. We have His Holiness Dayananda SWAMI Maharaj with us, who will be speaking to us from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Today's class is taken from us this time. So Maharaj, you're welcome once again. So if you're ready, I'll put Srila Prabhupada has already chanted Jayarada Madhav. So I'll put the verse on the screen and you can take it over, Maharaj.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, text number 10. This chapter is entitled Bhagavatam is the answer. Purushondam vinirbidya yadasocha sa vinigrataha atmanoyanam anvichcham aposhatsit shutri shuchihi. Does everybody ever try, or is it just me? Can't remember.
Okay, Maharaj, we can try. We're not responding because of the echoing, but I can chant since you've chanted, Maharaj. Purusho
Go on then.
Indam vinil vidyam yada sausa vinil gata atmano yanam avichaham apo swakshi shushi suchi. So if any devotee also want to chant, can try.
Purushaha, the Supreme
Purusha.
Person, Paramatma. Andam, the universes. Vinirbidya, making them each separately situated. Yada, when. Aso, the same. Saha, he, the Lord. Vinirgataha, came out. Atmanaha, of himself. Ayanam, lying in place. Anvisham, desiring. Apaha, water. Ashrakshit, created. Shuchihi, the most, Shuchihi, the most pure. Shuchihi, transcendental. Translation. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of Lord Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean in place of appearance of the first Purusha avatar, entered into each and of the universes, each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka. Translate purport. After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord Paramatma, the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Shukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and the extensions of plenary portions are none different from one another, and thus the Supreme Independent is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Shukadeva Goswami has promised to King Parikshit Parikshit, described herein the independence of the Purusha avatar, personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of material creation. Such activities of Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also Leela or pastimes of the Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization in the field of devotional service. Some may argue that why not relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are very relishable by the Prakrita or the mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system, mainly based on the bodily exercise, is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are materially attached to the mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relation with the Lord, are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker, Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer or creator who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord, who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows: Maya jakshena prakriti suryate sacharacharam etunanena kvanteya jagat viparivartate. The material nature, full of physical laws, is one of the different energies, one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendently all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws, both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent, without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita 9:11 replies to this foolishness in the following words: Avagyamanti mam madha manasim tanam ashritam parambhavam ajanato amabhutva maheshwaram. The foolish men, Muddha, do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eye of people in general when he descends himself by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and the infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the infinite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years, marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the mothers, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being, by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the mothers give submissive and all reception to the messages of the Lord, as in Srimad Bhagavatam, or in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, through the channel of disciplic succession, such mothers also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. Om Gyanantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastatya Deshitarine. So thank you everybody for joining and allowing me to do some service. So this third chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first 10 chapters it talks about creation, or things to do with creation. And this particular verse in the second canto is explaining how this particular section in the second canto is supposed to relate the Lord to the material creation. Unless we have a reference point, it's difficult to actually understand anything. In other words, the material creation is our present situation. So unless we understand our present situation properly, it's not possible to understand things in relation to it. There's no reference point. Just like it's impossible to understand the Supreme Personality of God's connection with this material world. So this is why in this particular purport it mentions that why aren't we hearing the pastimes of the Loka Vrindavan and Mathura and Krishna's intimate associates? And the answer is in two parts. One, it's said in that purport that we're not really, as neophyte devotees, speaking for myself, of course, is that we're not qualified to actually really understand those pastimes and relish them. We'll misunderstand them. And the other thing is, it's explained in Bhagavatam that these pastimes of creation are, and it says in this particular purport, that they're actually just as relishable for the pure devotee. Because anything in relationship to Krishna is interesting for the pure devotee. He's just interested in Krishna. And so therefore, in Nectar of Devotion, it says that a devotee will ask. Actually, in Bhagavatam, it says that Parikshit Maharaj says this, because you're inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead in relation to this particular subject matter, it must be very important. In other words, we maybe seem to be talking about mundane topics, but they're only mundane for a mundane brain. And when we see them in that light, then we come up with so many different conclusions. But the trained devotee, the experienced devotee, when he sees them in relationship to the Supreme Lord, then they become transcendental. And this is Krishna consciousness. Learning to see everything and remember Krishna at the same time. I forgot the verse now. Tasmat Sarvashu Kalishu, Mamanus Mare Yugyacha, Maya Pitamanobadya, Nam Ivaishasya Samshaya. He says, Krishna tells Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna. And with your mind absorbed in me and your activities dedicated towards me, you will attain me without a doubt. So that's Krishna consciousness. It's not that we have to, be seeing the deity all the time. That's in the beginning. It helps us to fix the mind. But, a practitioner has to learn to see Krishna when he's not in full view of a deity, when he's in so many different conditions of life. And this is training for the final lesson when we leave this world. Then there'll be so many distractions, so many difficulties with the body, but we'll still connect everything with Krishna. It's just like Dadichi Muni. Dadichi Muni was asked by, I think I mentioned this last time actually. Dadichi Muni was asked by Indra to give up his body, in other words. He said he wanted his bones. He wanted to make a thunderbolt. He was advised to us by Lord Vishnu. And Dadichi Muni, he just tested him for some time. And then he, without even thinking about it, he left his body. And it's described in that section of the Srimad Bhagavatam that he never even realized he'd left his body. He was so absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So that's the beauty of this process. It takes us out of the material world completely. And here, Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Satyavachanam. Krishna, Maya, Akshena means vision. Krishna's looking over the material energy. By his personal self, he's actually overseeing everything. Maya Dakshena Prakriti. It's Krishna's energy. And we'll go back a little bit actually to the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it'll explain why we're actually talking about the Purusha avatars. If you remember, in the first chapter, there are 6 questions. What is the ultimate good for everybody? And then it talks about, who will cease hearing such pastimes. And it talks about two types of incarnations. And talks about the Leela avatars and the Purusha avatars. And in the 17th verse, it's specifically speaking about the adventure, the transcendental adventures of the Lord. So those transcendental adventures are the Purusha avatars. And the other verse is talking about the Leela avatars. And so this is what Shukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit about the Purusha avatars. And in this particular section, in the 3rd chapter, the conversation goes to creation and starts to explain it in detail. And that's a conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. So Yeah, the origin of everything is Krishna. And so the expansions of Krishna gradually, Krishna expands as Balaram, who expands as Shankarshan in the first Chaturvyuha, and from Shankarshan expands Narayan, and from Narayan in the second comes the second Chaturvyuha, and the Shankarshan in that expands to Karanadakashaya Vishnu, who we're talking about now. He created all the planetary systems, and then what did he do? He entered into the planetary systems, into each universe, as the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, which we're hearing about. And then from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, he became the universal form. And from the universal form, there are two creations. One is the one by Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and then the other one is by Brahma. One is called Prakriti, and one is called Vaikarika, the creation by Brahma. And first thing Brahma created, first thing that was created was Mahatattva, the origin of everything in this world. Then the false ego, to misidentify with the creation, and then the different stages of living not the different stages of living entities. Then knowledge was given to the living entity, and then eventually the demigods were created. They're from the first creation. They're coming out of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and then ignorance. So nothing works without ignorance. Usually we say nothing will work if we're in ignorance. But in this world, unless we're in ignorance, nothing in the material world will actually act as it's supposed to do. So Krishna has to cover everything by ignorance. And then we can function in forgetfulness of Krishna. And then at that point, Lord Brahma takes over. And he starts creating the living entities. First the one with two hooves on one. This is like the cows, animals like that with the split hoof. Then the next stage of living entities are those with one hoof, like the horse, and then the one with five claws, like the tiger and the lion and so forth. And these are all living entities who are what's described in the Bhagavad Gita as Anamaya. Anamaya means they know that they have to find food. And also Pranamaya. They realize Pranamaya means they're aware of their existence. Some living entities are just like trees. They're just aware of where to get food, where to get water. And so these are also part of the first creation. And then Pranamaya starts coming where those animals are aware of their existence. And then the ninth creation is the human beings. And the human beings are the ones who have the Jnanamaya or Maya. So Jnanamaya is the realizing that we think, we feel, and we will. We're able to actually make choices and create activity. All the other animals are acting automatically according to the modes of nature they've acquired. But the living entity in the human form is given the intelligence to work with the material energy in a particular way. So in that way, when he's given that freedom, he creates responsibility, his responsibility for his activities. And therefore, there's karma. And so we need direction from Shastra in order to, utilize that facility that's being given in an appropriate way. So this is how creation is taking place, that one thing's coming from another, and there's a gradual progression. So, we might think that, what do the scientists say? Darwinism. they say that it's, I don't know what they call it actually. They call it the survival of the fittest. What's the technical name he gives? He gives us a name for this. Natural selection, isn't it? Those who have the strength and the ability to survive, they'll naturally actually progress, and they'll select connection with others, and different species of life will be formed due to being, like a survivor mentality. And the weak will actually just perish like that. But what's the other one? The other one is not natural selection, intelligent design. That's it. That means that it's not just happening according to, the natural interactions of the modes of nature. And, well, you don't even know about the modes of nature, but the interactions of the elements under different conditions is producing life. And, but actually Sataputta, I saw one program, he was on with Swarup Damodar Goswami. And Sataputta gave most of the talking, because it was on talking more or less about his particular field of activity, which was, science and technology. And he said that he worked out, according to the formula, the odds for life taking place by, natural selection, which means that by accident, in other words, he says it's so huge that it's impossible. the number of zeros that will be there, when we give odds, we give 5 to 1, 2 to 1. It's like trillions and trillions to 1. He said the number is so big that it's not even a consideration. So this is the actual situation. And even in Bhagavatam, in Darwin's theory, there's one book called Reinventing Darwin. It actually goes through Darwin's theory and picks it all to pieces, based on different people who wrote, different scientists who write in that book. One of them is Michael Cramer. He's I forget his initiated name. Anybody remember? He's a scientist. And the same thing was being mentioned by one scientist, that the chances of things accidentally happening is just so remote that it doesn't even worth thinking about. And so therefore, Bhagavatam is here giving us, the alternative. It's giving us really informed information in detail about the creation. And, what the scientists say, they can't go further than, trying to bamboozle everybody with big words, but it comes from a big bang. Oh, what's the other one? A primordial soup. Has anybody heard about the primordial soup? I was once arguing with one young lady actually, and I was talking about, we got talking about in-depth things about creation, and I thought, okay, I'll open up and start talking about, how the Bhagavatam explains it. And she said, it's not like that. And so I said, well, you explain then. And she said, we crawled out of a primordial soup, with fully dressed with coat and tie and everything. And, this is the way she put it. We crawled out of a primeval soup. And so this is the extent of their research. Well, Bhagavatam's not like that. In fact, there's one book out called Life Comes from Life. Has anybody read that book? It gives all the arguments. This is Sataputta's conversations with Prabhupada. Not Sataputta, Satsvarup. What's his name? Swarup Damodar Goswami. His conversations with Srila Prabhupada. So here we have, we've just like sort of highlighted the futility of trying to understand things through material means. The first thing in the nature of instruction explains this point that, you know, we're limited by the nature of the body we have. You know, we have imperfect senses, we make mistakes, we're illusion, and we cheat. All these things are there, so, you know, it's very difficult to accept anything from somebody who has those defects. So the knowledge has to be apurushaya. Apurushaya means that it's not coming from anybody who's contaminated by these defects. And so therefore, any knowledge that's learned, it has to come from a pure source. And that pure source is coming from a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Pure. And the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually explained also in Bhagavatam, in the first verse, and elaborated on in the by Jiva Goswami in the Tatsandavas. And so everything is very, very scientific. Even in Bhagavatam, in the first canto's third chapter, it talks about, you know, the different avatars of the Lord. And there were 22. And then it says, Ete chamsa kalapum sa Krishna stu bhagavan swayam. Indriyarya biokalam lokam mridayanti yuge yuge. So it's saying all the previous incarnations, you know, portions, amsa, are portions of the portions. Anga, and then amsa is, and then kala, kala is a portion of the portion. It's about Krishna's two, but, two means but Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so right at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, things are actually put in place. And as we go through Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll understand that, you know, it's not always Krishna who's seen as the Supreme according to the different cantos we're in. Sometimes Vishnu is seen as the Supreme, sometimes even Lord Shiva. And then so many contradictions are there. But at the end of the day, you know, this is called the Emperor verse, Ete Chamsa verse, because in the light of this verse, we judge everything else. So everything is resolved in that. And so therefore, there's a reason that somebody else is actually alluded to being the Supreme. Because the Bhagavatam is talking to all classes of people. And we can't talk to all classes of people unless we actually are on the same page, unless we reciprocate with them. I was talking to one person, it was just yesterday actually, and doing book distribution. And on book distribution, you have to learn the art of, you know, being in their field, being in their space, although we're not. To start with, we have to do that. I was talking to one person, he came over, and eventually it turned out that he was actually, you know, he was like a transvestite. What do they call it? They've got some series of letters for it. Those different classes of different sexually orientated people. Anybody remember? Can't remember. But memory's going. GB something, GB, gays.
LGBTQ.
What?
It's LGBTQ.
Oh, that's it. That's the one. And so he asked me, he says, what do you think to this LVGQ? I said, well, I have to be frank with you, you know. I said that, you know, unless things are actually connected to the source, unless we see things from a spiritual point of view, then everything else is just a person's particular choice due to being affected by this material world. And therefore, everything is really the same, whether you're LVGQ, whatever, or whether you're actually this, or whether, it's all just, you know, a concoction of the mind. I says, and it's just an attempt to enjoy this material world in one particular way or another. And when I said that, he just walked off. So, you know, you can present things, you can try to present things in a neutral way, but it doesn't always work. So this is what Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to do. It's trying to make the material world relevant to Krishna, relevant to the people so they can understand Krishna's connection. And this is the same principle which is applied in Upanishads. There's 2 verses in particular. I'll just read them. Vidyam chaviyam ya cha vidyam chavidyam chayas tad vedovayam saha avidyayam mrityam tritva vidyaya amritam ashnute. Only one who has learned the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So this is saying it all. We have to learn about the spiritual realm and Krishna. We have to learn about the material realm and its relationship with Krishna. And then we can understand things fully. And we can make, because we're in the material world, we can then use the material world in a therapeutic way to relieve ourselves from it. Otherwise, we're just caught up in the material world. And, it talks about modern education system is not doing that. It's like a jewel on a cobra's head. So the cobra, it's actually a very dangerous serpent. But it looks very nice when it's got a jewel. But if we try to take that jewel, then we're calling death very near. It says so similarly, modern educational systems like that, we're actually just killing people's ability to understand spiritual life. It's just in the name of knowledge. That's the point. We're calling it knowledge, and yet it's actually the greatest form of ignorance. So that's even worse than ignorance. It's actually covered ignorance. So we have to have knowledge of both. And then the next verse is talking about worship. Sambhutim cha vinasham cha yas tad vedobhayam saha vinashena micham tritva sambhutam yatam ashnute. One should know perfectly the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna and his transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes, as well as a temporary material creation with its temporary demigods, men and animals. When one knows these, he surpasses death and the ephemeral cosmic manifestation with it. And in the eternal kingdom of God, he enjoys his eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So, Upanishads is confirming Bhagavatam. What do we do if we want to confirm anything in Shastra? We go to Upanishads, we go to Shruti. Although Srimad Bhagavatam is the Amala Purana, it's actually the last word in transcendence, the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is the end of all knowledge. Still, the Shrutis are accepted as, the highest knowledge because it's coming directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we can relate things to, the Upanishads, then we can argue with anybody, even people who are learned in the Shastra. I don't want to go too much because I was under the impression that it was 3 o'clock. I didn't bother to check up the time difference. So I have to leave at just before 5 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock Dharma time. So we'll stop there and we'll open up for questions because it's quite an interesting subject matter. And, we can speak on it for a long time. Or it can be branched out into so many other subcategories. Darwinism, life comes from life, this argument, creation, ignorance and knowledge, like that.
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Salika Prabhu, are you there?
Hare Krishna, sorry, Prabhu. Please go ahead.
Well, anyone with questions, comments, realizations, please, you may unmute and speak. Maharaj, we're sorry for the
All right.
misunderstanding of the timings, but if I'm not mistaken, GMT has the same time with Ghana today as we speak. London has 1 hour time difference with GMT. So I think the confusion was GMT and the London time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, GMT means Greenwich Mean Time. So
Yeah,
Greenwich is in London.
Yeah, the Greenwich Mean Time is, of course, it passes through London, and then it connects to Ghana. So London and Ghana have the same time. But because Ghana does not have adjusted time, the time is usually different from London when London observes the adjustment. So if we check online, Ghana and GMT has the same time. Ghana and London does not. So GMT and London time changes.
Yeah, we have what do you call it? Time saving. But then it
Time
comes from the
saving.
Second World War when they put the clocks forward,
Yes.
and then in October they put them back again.
Yeah, Ghana doesn't. And so GMT is now the same with Ghana, whereas London is not.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that even though GMT is from London, but GMT and London specifically are different 2 times. They only share the same time if there is no time adjustment. But anyway, that aside, Maharaj, I've been wondering, I asked this question to one Sri Prabhupada disciple who took an offense at my question. But I'm still not very clear as to the meaning of the word ahankara or ahamkara. Some dialects say ahamkara. Of course, I think Sri Prabhupada taught us ahankara with an N. Is it translated into English as ego or false ego? If it is translated into English as false ego, then how does Krishna blame or hold us responsible for not being able to recognize him? Because if Krishna gave us ego, which means that the ability to ascertain ourselves as I am different from you, I am different from him, I am different from this or that, the awareness of the self. If originally it is there as false, then that is our position and we should act accordingly. But if ahankara is understood to be ego, which is different from false ego, then we are accountable for not recognizing the difference between us and the Supreme Lord. So if you may want to give some insight as to what ahankara actually means and what we as human beings in particular should do with it.
Well, if you go to Bhagavad Gita in the 13th chapter, text 8 to 12, it talks about items of knowledge. And it says, Amanit Mamadambitvam Ahimsa Shanti Arjam Acharya Pasanam Shacham Steram Atma Vidinga Indriyatheshu Vairagyam Anahankara Evacha. It's an ana before ahankara means freedom from false ego. That's knowledge, you want to be free from false ego. So it naturally means that when it's ahankara, it's false ego, according to that verse.
So that means that originally we were created with this false ego. If we created with this false ego, which is our nature, then what is wrong with it when we live our nature?
No, the false ego is a false identification with the material energy. The material energy is eternal, and the individual soul is eternal. This is two subjects of the Bhagavad Gita. But we identify it as enjoyers, and then that's false ego, because we're not the enjoyers, we're the servant. So when we identify the material energy as an energy of the Supreme Lord and use it appropriately in his service, and then that's real ego. So, we have ego, that means existence, we actually exist. But when it's misplaced, it's actually a false ego. It's just that we're actually trying to, manipulate things in a wrong way. It's false.
Well, thank you for answering, Maharaj, but I cannot consider any information that is also found in the Vedic literatures to be superior to what is found in the Vedic literatures. But there is this guy, Freud, who had this theory of Freudism, and he addresses ego. And he talks about the three divisions of ego. And ego is the proper awareness, according to Freud, which I cannot understand, and I accept also that this ego is what makes one identify the differences between selves. But there is one other division of this awareness, which he termed it id. And with the id, he termed it as false ego, because id is what brings out the beast nature of us as human beings. And therefore, I think I am white, I'm better than black, I am educated, I'm better than uneducated, I'm rich, I'm better than the poor, I'm stronger, I'm better than the weakling. This is the id, which is the false ego, which kind of correlates to Vedic teachings, because the false ego makes us feel that we are so powerful, we can do whatever we want. Our effort determines our success. But if initially, by Krishna creating us, he created us with this false ego, then it makes it questionable why we should be questioned by God when we are operating like that. When a tiger eats animal flesh, nature doesn't question the tiger because that is how it's been designed. So this is where I do not understand why Ahankara is a false ego.
Yeah, this world's a shadow of the original world, but we can look at it from that point of view. It says Kristi Siti Palaya Sadhana Shakti Eka. It says that, you know, it talks about creation, maintenance, and dissolution in this particular purport to this verse. And Srishti means creation, Stiti means, you know, it's stable in one place, and then Pralaya means destroying agency. And this is Durga Devi, who's getting the power from the Supreme Lord. And so, you know, Maya Devi is, you know, is the superintendent deity of the material energy. And she's creating all these illusory situations so that you know, the soul forgets his real ego. And, you know, it's due to the desire of the soul. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. I think it's in the 5th chapter, text 16 to 18, if you read that section. It talks about, you know, the living entity in illusion blames the Supreme Lord for his position. He says, but he should understand that the three modes of material nature are actually forcing him to act in a certain way due to his original desire to actually, you know, try and enjoy separately from God. So facilities being made by the three modes. Then the argument might be that, well, then Krishna's in charge of the three modes, so he's still to blame. And then it says in the next verse that this illusory way of looking at things, or this misunderstanding, is cleared away by the process of devotional service. And then we're able to see that actually Krishna is fulfilling desires. In his Upanishads, it's backed up by saying he's a self-sufficient philosopher who's been fulfilling everybody's desire since time immemorial. So he's just fulfilling our desire to enjoy separate from him. And if we remember him, which is our real ego, that we are Jivera Swarup Krishnera Nichadas, where he's his servant, then we can't actually act on the platform of false ego. It's only when we can forget that we can actually act on a false platform. So this is what, you know, from the scriptures I've been, you know, this is all I can actually really say, what our Shastras say about it. I mean, I don't know about other philosophers. I'm not conversant with their particular philosophy or their terminology, so I couldn't really speak.
Well, I think this may be my last comment on this topic of the ego and the false ego. And the reason I am thinking that there must be a difference between ego and false ego is we say prestige and we say false prestige. So there is nothing wrong with prestige, but if it is abused or misused, then it becomes false prestige. There is nothing wrong in pride, but if we abuse or misuse, then it becomes false pride. And even though we are told not to be proud, what I believe that means is we should not be falsely proud. Because in the scriptures, it is said that the Pandavas were very proud of their lineage coming from the line of the Yadu dynasty. They had a pride being members of the dynasty. So that is why I'm asking Maharaj that ego should be there, and then which is like a neutral, and then if one abuses or misuses it, then it becomes a false ego. But we'll leave it there. We'll go to His Grace Shima Acharya. Please, you may unmute.
Just one thing is that I have to leave now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Because, I misidentified the time. So
The time, okay.
otherwise I could have stayed a little bit longer. But anyway, thank you for your invitation and your words. Maybe Sriman Maharama Acharya can Vraha Acharya can throw some more light. Okay, thank you everybody.
Well, thank you. Maharaj, if you may spare us 1 more minute, we're going to humbly request you, while we requested the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation for Maharaj's presence and love and wisdom shared with us today. Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasyandubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai.
Ki jai. All glories to His Holiness Dayananda Swami Maharaj ki jai.
The Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Salika Prabhu, are you there? Shima, sorry. Let me do this.